Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm going to do something a bit different this week by way of a very exciting new book. It's actually due out in a week or two's time, early May. And it's something very, very different, which explores, if you like, the relationship between religion and sport, or in this case, religion and football. You might think that there's not a lot of similarity between football and religion, the way it's played sometimes, but in fact there is. And I refer to a book written by Gavin Peacock, the former Chelsea, Newcastle, Queen's Park Rangers star player. Scored a lot of goals, particularly from midfield in his career. But when would it have been? Around 2008, he left a very comfortable job as a high-profile football pundit, having had a successful career, to go into the church. And he emigrated to Canada, from where I can very happily now introduce Gavin Peacock.
Hi, Alan. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. Good to see you and to hear you. And just, I'll mention your book first, and then what we have in common. A Greater Glory, From Pitch to Pulpit, written with Lance Hardy, a mutual friend. You and I worked on the same programme many moons ago, didn't we? Which was edited by Lance. Final Score on BBC television. They were great days.
Great days. Really enjoyed my time at the BBC with great professionals like yourself, and it was a second dream career. And yes, Lance Hardy was fantastic in sort of platforming me. I actually wrote the book myself. Lance commended the book, endorsed it. He didn't write it with me, but no, a lot of credit goes to Lance for my media career. And yeah, looking at you, I think you've aged better than I have over the last few years. Must be all the wear and tear of church ministry that's wearing me down.
I reckon so. You're not a very good advert there for the church. Yeah. Lost a bit of hair. But the thing is that the viewers of BBC television were spared looking at my face, unlike yours. So I was just a voice in the wilderness, reporting from places like Hillsborough, Bramall Lane, and by the way, we'll mention the two Sheffield clubs in passing. But before we move on with the chat, Gavin, and exactly how your life has gone and why it's gone the way it has, I must introduce as well, to give a local flavour to this, but also a religious flavour as well, somebody I've known for many years, Baz Gascoigne. To those who don't know him, he's a chaplain, and among the organisations that he helps are Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, Rotherham United Football Club, and also Sheffield Eagles Rugby League. Good to see you there, Baz. And nice. You've not met Gavin, but clearly the story that he tells in his book is clearly of great interest to you, I'm sure.
Oh, very much so. I am someone who led a church for 21 years. I understand the pressures of being a church leader, and also the pressures by obviously working with the two football clubs, understanding the pressures that the players are under at different times of the season. So no doubt I look forward to hearing and reading the book as well, find out more. Hopefully that I can use that as well to help others.
Well, I've not read the book as yet because it's not out actually yet, but I am looking forward to doing so. Tell me how this happened then, because you have this great career. I mean, to the uninitiated, I mean, you've only got to look it up on Wikipedia. Played for QPR, Gillingham, for his dad actually, Keith Peacock, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Chelsea, and QPR again. I referred to being a great goal scorer from midfield, more than 100 goals in 540 league appearances. We're going to see some of those goals in a short while. And then progressed into, the comfy world of, well, actually, I know it's not, of punditry in the media and on TV. What could be a better life than that, Gavin? Why give all that up?
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole story of my book. I've got a copy here just so people can see. This is a Greater Glory, From Pitch to Pulpit. And yeah, it's out on May the 7th on general release. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. I had steered clear of, I'd been asked to write a book for many years, and lots of ex-pros, do it, sometimes do it during their careers, but at the end of their career. And I thought, well, at 35, maybe I'll give it a few more years to see what happens in my life, and then I went into the media, which was another great challenge and a second dream career. And having been a Christian since I was 18, I'd spoken publicly about my faith through my whole football career and even in my media career. I was even presenting songs of praise, at one point for when I was working on Match of the Day and Final Score. I was sort of branching out. But around 2006, I felt a very strong call to ministry, which was then affirmed by my church leadership. I started to do some studies, Old Testament, New Testament studies, while still doing Match of the Day. And then that flame really sort of lit up in me. And so I said to my wife, I think I'm going to give up the second dream career to take some time to prepare. People think I'm mad, but this is the greater calling I think I've been called to. Not every Christian is called to church ministry, of course. And so then after moving to Canada, kids were young and then making a life here in Canada. At one point, after my studies were finished out here, I was looking at coming back and speaking to different churches, one actually in Sheffield. But I got offered a position here at the church in Calgary, Alberta. Many people remember Calgary for Eddie the Eagle's famous jumps in the Winter Olympics many years ago in the 1980s, but it's the Canadian Rockies around here, Rocky Mountains. And at age 50, just a couple of years ago now, I was asked again to write a book. And I thought, well, 50 is a significant age, half a century. I can reflect with some maturity now on my life and the different portions of my life. And it's a different story. It's an interesting story. And if I could sum it up, I would say the book is a story of life in all of its complexities, set against the backdrop of the beautiful game of football, but with the floodlight of my Christian faith upon it. And so that I think there's something for everyone in there, and it will appeal broadly, obviously to football fans, obviously to Christians, but you don't have to be either to enjoy it, because there's human interest things. I talk about family and fatherlessness in the culture, and disability and racism and mental health issues, and starting again in a new career, these kinds of things that people will be able to kind of relate to along the way. So that's why I decided to give up the second dream career, as I said, that call to ministry. That's why I decided to write the book at this stage of my life now.
I remember when it was announced, actually, I was at a meeting, a team meeting down in a TV centre in London, and hosted by Lance Hardy and Ray Stubbs, who were the presenters. And they told us, in fact, you and Carlton Palmer, who's a real friend of mine, were the main pundits at the time. Quite different characters, the two of you. And we was quite stunned that Gavin Peacock's leaving us to go into the church. And then Ray Stubbs said, and Carlton Palmer is not leaving us to go into the church. And everybody laughed. Everybody laughed. It was like a big joke. But just tell me what's the reaction been of ex-players, the people you played with, people in the game? Did anybody sort of say, what are you doing that for, Gavin? Well, were they puzzled, or did some of them really understand it?
I think I found the general response very respectful to my decision. It wasn't like the media world was going to fall apart without me. My career was going well, and personally, I was loving the BBC. I loved everyone there, the team that I was working with. But yeah, there were a few eyebrows raised, like, why would you do that? Why couldn't you carry on with your media work and do some preaching on the side or what have you? Why couldn't you stay in England even? So there were questions like that people did raise eyebrows. But my decision to move away as well was, my profile was really high at the time in those sort of mid 2000s. My face was on TV all the time. And even when I was doing my studies in the UK, the guys I was studying with, they always wanted to talk to me about football and what I'd said at the weekend about, Chelsea or Arsenal or Liverpool. And I'm like trying to study the Bible here. And I didn't mind obviously talking to them about it, but it was a good chance to come away to anonymity, really, to where no one knew me for football or football punditry. And they would just hear what I had to say from the Bible. And now it's interesting when I mean, doors have opened up. I speak globally now. I get invited to go speak around the world, UK, obviously. And when I come back now, obviously people remember the football side, but they actually now are primarily receiving me, you know, as a pastor that's coming to speak. And I always do a little bit of, you know, one evening where I'll talk about my faith in football. And I've found just football profoundly connected to the English public through football. It's in the fabric of our blood in the UK, around much of the world, of course, and how you can connect to people through it. And so it's always a great chance to speak to people about, you know, the glory that is found in football and all what we love about it, and how that actually even points to a greater glory in Jesus Christ.
It's interesting what you say there about getting away from the trappings of your fame, really, and leading a more private existence and dedicating that existence elsewhere. Because the more common story that I hear from ex-players, and I know a lot of ex-players, is many of them become lost souls because they've lost who they were, the identity of being a star player for a particular team, and the end of a career can be a moment of crisis for them that they have to get through. And I see you're nodding there, and that's just not happened to you, but you can see that side of it, I'm sure.
Absolutely, because if your identity is tied up in football, and then suddenly that identity is taken away because you're not a footballer anymore, upon what do you stand? For me, my identity was in the Lord, and the Lord is always with me beyond football. Football is temporary, but God is eternal. I talk about this in the book, and it's a fact, and I'm sure, you know, Baz can testify to this in speaking with lots of footballers, ex-footballers over the years, is that when a player comes to the end of their career and that is taken away, there's various factors involved, but that identity is gone, and even the marriages will come under strain because, you know, a wife's identity has even maybe been tied up in that. And if her husband, you know, is spiraling down, the wife's been used to that kind of lifestyle, then it puts a strain on the marriage as well. So I do speak about this quite a lot in the book, of even with regards to things like mental health. When a professional footballer, let's say a professional footballer, becomes a Christian, all of a sudden that man's identity isn't tied up to the sum of his performances on the field. Which it was for me before I became a Christian. No, he is more than the sum of his performances on the field. His identity is elsewhere. And that actually relieves a lot of pressure and strain, and actually allows him to be the best footballer he could be, or insert any walk of life or vocation that you have. If your identity is in something other than that, and something that lasts, and someone who lasts, greater than the thing that you do for a living.
We'll see some of your on-pitch glories, which you would regard as your lesser glories, in a short while. Bringing Baz in, I mean, you speak to footballers and rugby league players on a regular basis. I mean, you were an aspiring footballer yourself at one time. You played rugby. You understand the psyche of sports people. Are you finding that in this climate now that you're more in demand, perhaps, than previously? People are troubled by things like social media, etc. How busy are you at Sheffield Wednesday, Rotherham, and Sheffield Eagles?
Yeah, well, Sheffield Wednesday, because of most of the staff, apart from playing staff and coaching staff, are on furlough. So I've only been in once, and that was at Christmas, just to drop off some gifts for people. I'm in touch through obviously social media, telephone calls, texts, emails with players and backroom staff. Rotherham, I'm in there each week, so I see the players. And obviously, when COVID broke, obviously when they had a lockdown situation, then obviously I wasn't going. But what I think COVID has actually highlighted a lot of issues in people's lives, which was suppressed. So whether it would be not to do maybe with football, but other things that were going off because of COVID, you know, we're finding with our charity that lots of people just want to talk to someone and just want to be listened to, and maybe not even give advice. So some of the listening services that we provide, people just talk, and they'll say, oh, well, I won't talk for long. 50 minutes later, they're still talking. and we're just giving them that place where they can talk and not be judged, but just then say, well, okay, what would you like to do now? And some would say, well, I'd like to see you again. Others are just saying, I just needed to get that off my chest, Baz. I just needed to be able to express how I was really feeling, because it was affecting my home life. It was affecting how I'm playing or how I'm training. Thank you very much. And that's it. So, yeah.
You're finding, I mean, you're in the ideal position to testify that regardless of what people are paid or how high a profile they have because of what they do, their concerns and worries can be as deep as anybody else in society.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you hear often, oh, footballers, they've got an easy life. They only train so many hours a day. They get paid this. But they've got families, they've got children, they've got wives, they've got concerns. And some of them will be thinking, well, at the end of this season, I don't know what I'm going to be doing yet. So there's the pressure there building up. And yet then they've got to go on a pitch and perform to the best of the ability. And no footballer or rugby league player goes on the pitch thinking, I am going to make mistakes. They go wanting to try the best, but inevitably they might make a mistake. And sadly, social media, as well as it's good, it can be crucifying people, which is awful.
And your choice of words, very well chosen there, Baz, the effect that it can have. We'll come to Gavin on that shortly. But let's just see a minute of glorious goals from Gavin's time with the likes of Newcastle United and Chelsea. Enjoy these.
Peacock, trying to turn Whelan, it's a good shot. What a brilliant goal. Gavin Peacock.
That's quite a collection there, Gavin. Do you ever watch them back yourself, or have you put that in a drawer and closed that compartment of your life?
Well, we've talked a little bit about social media. People put them up on social media, and it often reminds me of a goal or two that I'd even forgotten. I can remember quite a few of my goals, but it's still nice to see how I used to be able to move as well. In my mind, I could still move that way. In reality, I can't. But no, I mean, I was a goal-scoring midfielder that was, also could play up front. My father, Keith, was a professional footballer for Charlton Athletic for 17 years, and he was a midfielder who could get a goal as well. And so I was brought up to kind of have that eye for a goal, to be able to use both feet. So if you look at my goals, they're kind of fairly well balanced. It didn't matter what side it came, and the odd header as well inside the box. So I love scoring goals, and I made my mind up early on that that's the thing I wanted to be, a goal-scoring midfielder. I knew they'd be a good commodity for any manager to have. And I think it's one of those things, scoring goals is the point of the game, and nothing will get the crowd on their feet like a well-scored goal. And so it was just a real thrill to be able to do something for a living that actually got people on their feet, that thrilled them with something that was spectacular, or beautiful, or glorious. So it's always nice to look back on them.
Yeah, and looking back through your career, the characters and the big names that you played for as managers, Harry Redknapp at Bournemouth, there was Jim Smith as well, I think, a great character, Jim at Newcastle, Kevin Keegan, Glenn Hoddle at Chelsea. I mean, some remarkable men there. You must have some great memories of them.
And there's some good stories in the book as well about all of them. Ozzy Ardiles was another one that I had at Newcastle just before Kevin Keegan came for a year there, the great Argentinian. And he said to me, Ozzy was all of these managers played a great part in my career, but Ozzy kind of really pushed me forward into the head of the diamond system that he played, and said you're like a rough diamond and he's smoothing a few edges, and he said you'll take off. And Ozzy was Maradona's mentor. I was no Maradona, but to have that guy say that to me was great. Keegan was the motivator of men, like a bolt of electricity through Newcastle. Glenn Hoddle was the great visionary that sparked the Kings Road Revolution and turned us into a side that was getting to cup finals, European Cup semi-finals, and Ruud Gullit came in after him. And then when I went to QPR, of course, I had Jerry Francis, who was, a manager, one of my most favourite managers to play for, was a great leader of men, a great tactician. So I look back on my career, and throughout the book, another thread of the book is a study of leadership, a study of great leaders, and what makes a great leader. And these principles you can take into any walk of life, but there are a few good stories of the different managers along the way. Some of them are quite funny.
I bet there's characters, but the characters all the way through football. The folklore of the game is ingrained with that sense of humour. And I would imagine during that period, I mean, we're talking about the 1990s, really. 1990 onwards has been a great time of your career. And it was also a special time in Sheffield football. I mean, unbelievable as it may seem now, there were several years where both of the Steel City clubs were in the Premier League or the top flight simultaneously. And in particular, Sheffield Wednesday had a great team at that time. I'm sure you've got memories of facing them and some of the players.
Indeed. And, our friend Carlton Palmer was, in the 90s, obviously that's when he got his England caps as well. Sheffield Wednesday were a good team. I'd always kind of kept an eye on Sheffield Wednesday because I played with David Hurst in England youth and England under 19s when we were coming through as young professionals. And so you'd always keep an eye on your England teammates, teams to see how they were doing. But yeah, in the 90s, always a hard place to go and get a result. Of course, we went there in the FA Cup replay in 1994, which went to extra time and we won. But I remember going up to Sheffield Wednesday and thinking, boy, I don't know if we can win this. This is going to be a tough game. Mark Bright was playing in those days. And it was, it was a tough place to go. Obviously, Sheffield United, again, difficult team to play against. Sheffield, a big footballing city with a great tradition and history. And so I always enjoyed the games because they had a big sense of occasion about them, whether you played them at their ground or whether they came to visit us at Stamford Bridge. And one or two, I think if I probably think back, Sheffield Wednesday I scored a few goals against, not so much Sheffield United. But I think maybe my results overall may have been 50-50 in terms of winning and losing. So pretty even.
Well, now, of course, there are troubled times on both sides of the city. We'll reflect on that towards part two, I think, when we reconnect with the conversation after the break. But Baz, you're dealing with footballers at the moment who have got not just the normal stresses and strains and anxieties of life, but they've got anxieties in their job. They don't know which division they're going to be playing in next season. And in fact, you've got a foot in the two camps of rivals or enemies, haven't you, in Rotherham and Sheffield Wednesday, who are both battling to stay in the Championship. Have you found that I know that I wouldn't expect you to name names, but are players anxious about this scenario and the situation?
Yeah, because every game, is like a cup final at the moment because, they need to win. They need to get points. And like I said earlier, no one's not going out there to try. But obviously the pressure that they're under, and also, one team wins, coming back from a 1-0 down, come back and win 3-1. Then sadly another team, doing really well, but then 2 goals go in and they get beat 2-0, and that's added pressure again. And for Darren and the Wednesday boys, I believe they can still do it. If they've got the players to do it, but it's a big ask, and then Warney at Rotherham and Richie Barker, they've got games in hand, but people say it's better to have the points than the games in hand. But this week's a big week for them. They've got 3 games in the next 5 days, 6 days, I think it is, which is huge as well. So there's a lot of pressure because some of them won't know where they're going to be next year and which league they're going to be in, and etc. So that's a lot of added pressure.
I bet there's some humour too that they're glad to have somebody like yourself and your best pal on their side.
Well, you get them all saying, send a prayer up, Baz, sort of thing. And I pray for both teams. I pray for the safety of the players, the well-being. People have asked me before, does God answer a prayer of let this team win? Well, I've prayed quite a few of them and we've ended up getting beat. So obviously the answer is no. But I think the main thing is, like, I'm just there as well as chaplains all around the country. I mean, Sports Chaplains UK, we have something like over 550 chaplains now in all different sports, and I think it's 70% of in football. We're just there to journey with people through life, through, the good times, the bad times, the difficult times. And sometimes, players don't want to talk to you because they're busy, they're focused on the next game. But other times they'll say, could I just have a chat? So yesterday a player just said, can I just have a chat, Baz, after the end of the training? I went, yeah. And we just spent 5 minutes and he was just talking to me about something, nothing to do with football. And then he went, cheers, Baz, see you. And that was it. It's just being there and just letting them know, I don't class myself as a religious person. I just class myself as someone, like Gavin said, who's got a faith in God. God has changed my life dramatically. And I want other people to understand that God is for them. He loves them. And he thinks the best of them.
Alan, if I can speak to the just the growth of just say football chaplaincy, obviously sports chaplaincy as well in general. But when I was starting out, and I went to Bournemouth in 1989, Harry Redknapp bought me, and from Gillingham, and I just got married to Amanda. So, I'm like 21 years old. And there was a club chaplain there, Alan Fisher, was an older gentleman. And Harry was brilliant. Alan would be around the ground and he was a proper gentleman, and he'd come into the dressing room on a match day, and Harry gave him access. And he was one of the very few in the 80s. And now to see the growth, and I had another club chaplain at QPR, Dave Langdon, who was brilliant. He used to pray with me, had a little Bible study. But it's a difficult job to be a football chaplain, because the lads and the training ground, the banter, and to build trust with them is important, and there's different personalities with chaplains. So, you've got to earn the guys' trust. So it's a kind of long game you're playing a little bit with them. And you've also got to have a good sense of timing and wisdom as to know, when to speak or when to listen, when you would bring in a perspective of the Christian faith and these kind of things, and offer them the hope of the gospel that as Christians that we do have. But it's remarkable because football is, I would say, a microcosm of culture. They're ordinary guys going through the same kinds of things that people are going through, except in an extraordinary world. And the pressures are massively high. And so you can have massive highs and lows within 2 or 3 days. But people have these highs and lows in life. So footballers are experiencing these things. And the role of the club chaplain, I'm just delighted to see how that's been developed and grown and over the years now, such that they're in, I think, every football league club now, which is wonderful.
Just a reminder as well, Alan, that we're there obviously not just for the playing staff, but for the kit man, the groundsman, the office staff. There's people work in the shops. So we're there for everybody, and people of any faith or none at all. We're just there to be there, a support and encouragement. And I think because we don't work for the club, we're independent, people feel, oh, I could talk to you, because you're not going to go back to my boss and say what I've spoke to you about.
Yeah, very valuable service that you provide, Baz, and fascinating insight from both of you. And Gavin, we're going to have more chat part 2. There is a very poignant episode, I know, and a topical subject that Baz has agreed to talk to us about from his own life. That happened to him some years ago, and we'll talk about that in part 2 as well. With Gavin Peacock, the former top footballer, James Gregg will join us to round up what's going on in the area. And finally, there is something. You know, we have events to talk about. So do rejoin us in a couple of minutes for part 2.